we brought in the capability to enforce your application licenses. This can be useful in the case that you have a specific number of licenses and you want RDMC to make certain that you don't install more licenses than you actually own. In this particular one, you can specify that you want to enforce application deployment licensing. Once you actually do that, you can then go in and specify the name of the device, the license key that applies to that device, and add it into the list. So, for example, we will say test PC, and this has license key 1234567, and update. That is then placed in there and added to the license count. When we package applications, there is a special method that we can use by specifying a property in an MSI package, which allows us to pass that license key to it. What will happen then is when we go to deploy the application, it will first off only deploy to a machine that is listed in this group, and it will then also automatically provide the license key that is specific to that machine to the installation that runs. It's not something that happens a lot, since the majority of applications nowadays support volume licensing where everybody installs using a single license key, but there are still a few applications out there that do require an individual license for each machine, and this is where that particular function can be quite useful. That pretty much covers the patch management side of things. We've also looked through pretty much all of the options involving software deployment. We have several other webinars planned, some of which will touch vaguely on some of these areas. But if you've got any questions specifically applying to software deployment or patch management, this would be a great time.
Just like to say thanks, Jeff, for going through that detailed description of patch management, and I'll just open up the floor for any questions, and we'll see if we can answer them for you.
I just got a question. You can tell me if it's appropriate for this webinar or not. But I found at a school there was a package which ran successfully with Firefox but not with Internet Explorer, and I would like to know how I could deploy Firefox, which I might have to deploy right from the beginning as an application.
Okay, Firefox is a little bit tricky to deploy, but not terribly. Its default installer does not normally allow you to perform a fully automated install. Or to be more precise, it will install itself in an automated way. However, it won't preset all of the options that are necessary to make it run silently for each user. So in other words, the first time a particular user fires it up, it will still come through and ask them a number of options, such as do you want to import your shortcuts from Explorer and things like that. In that particular case, on the Firefox news groups, there are a number of different posts and some articles about how to do this. They specify the things that you need to add. In some cases, they are settings on the command line. In some cases, they're registry keys. It depends on the specific version of Firefox. I can't remember offhand, of course, what the specific ones are, but in the case of Firefox, you don't need to completely repackage. You can use its own installer and just specify the additional options, or import a registry file after the installation that pre-configures those options. Having said that, I'm pretty sure I do have a reasonably up-to-date installer for Firefox, so I can quite easily supply you with a copy of that one if you'd like to use it.
And that can also be added up through to the application portal as well for downloading of all our existing clients.
Absolutely. As Firefox is a freeware application, it's open to everyone, and it does provide an excellent option as a replacement browser for Internet Explorer. Any other questions?
Yeah, the other thing that I experienced at one school was that deploying Internet Explorer 7 seemed to put the deployment into a loop.
Okay.
The installation didn't seem to complete, even though it had.
Okay, my guess would be that the reason for this is because of the way the education network is set up requiring password-protected proxies, it probably wasn't able to successfully complete its installation because it didn't have the ability to connect to the Microsoft website, which is the final stage of Internet Explorer 7 configuring itself. The application package that we provide as standard, which is just part of the SOE framework, will work under any machine which has direct internet access or access to a proxy that has been pre-configured and doesn't require a username and password. But in this particular case, most likely the application would be stalling because of that. Now what we can do is customize the application package to either pre-include the setup information so it doesn't need to connect to Microsoft at the end of the installation, or pre-configure it with a username and password it can use to get through the proxy. So I would need to look at it to be certain, but I would say that's most likely going to be the reason for the problem. Now typically what will happen during an application deployment is if the application reports that it has not installed successfully, RDMC will attempt to install it again. Quite often the failure to install successfully will be because it temporarily lost connectivity with the server, for example, or for reasons like that, in which case if you fire the installation off again, it will usually resolve the problem, but not always. If the application continues to fail each time, it will effectively stall on that application and will continue trying indefinitely. If that happens, it's definitely worth knowing how to actually get the machine out of that state. That's done through the Client Manager. So we'll bring the Client Manager back up again. When you look at the options for a particular machine, let's wait for that to come back up. And, sorry, we need to reconnect. Right, this will take, okay. Unfortunately, my Client Manager doesn't seem to be behaving at the moment. Normally in Device Manager, what you would do is right-click on the machine and you'll notice a number of cleanup options. You've got a cleanup with system restart and cleanup without. Both of these two options will instruct the RDMC, will basically remove all of the current instructions that the RDMC has, including the current list of applications it is deploying. If you do a cleanup without restart, it will simply clear those registry keys, but nothing else will happen at that time. If you do a cleanup with restart, it will actually reboot the machine after it cleans those keys up. You will also notice one which gives it the instruction to advance to the next installation item. So if you're deploying a list of applications and the one that's actually failed is partway through the list, if you specify the advance option, it will effectively tell it to continue with the next one on the list even though the current one has failed, and it will then continue through to the end of the list. It's worth noting that that particular option, the advance to next installation, can only be performed on a single PC. The cleanup with or without restart options can be applied either to a single PC or to all machines in the environment. Obviously, if you are going to do the cleanup with system restart, be very, very careful about deploying it to everyone because you can and will reboot every machine that's connected to the RDMC Client Manager.
Oh, thanks for that, Jeff.
Okay, my pleasure. Okay, well I guess that wraps us up, so thank you very much for attending. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you'll join us next time in about a month's time for our next webinar. Thank you very much.